These are very easy. They are in all the colors we have, except for one kind of, are inorganic pigments. This is given. You have to have that. You cannot color concrete with organic pigments, even though organic pigments are much nicer. In color, they offer much brighter colors. You put them in the concrete and the UV light will just destroy them after a few days or weeks. So we are using inorganic pigments based on iron, chromium, cobalt, titanium. Iron are all the blacks, orange, black, orange, yellow, red, brown colors. So everything that you can kind of imagine as a color of rusty metal. We can do that with iron oxide, which is great. They are cheap, really good coloring, the most used by far. Green color we are getting from chromium oxide, blue from cobalt, which nowadays is very expensive because car batteries are using most of the cobalt in the world. So it's getting more and more difficult to get it for pigments. We still sell them crazy expensive, but there is not really an alternative to get good blue color. And titanium for white color, of course. There's one exception that is not inorganic, and that's carbon black. So when it comes to black pigments, you cannot really get black color with iron oxide. It's just not possible. You can get very close to black. It's like a super dark gray. And in many cases, it's enough to call that black, but they're like a deep, night sky black you cannot get. So for that, we are using carbon. Most of the carbon in Europe is coming from Ukraine and Russia, which is a bit difficult to get right now. So we are a bit low on stock in that one. So we are trying to not really promote that, but it is available. But when you use it, you definitely need a surface protection because the carbon black is not really inorganic. It's not UV stable. So it will, kind of faint after just a few days or weeks. Anyways. Generally, then pigments need to resist high pH. Obviously, concrete, cement, stone has a pH of 12-ish. So we need the material to resist that. UV radiation, because it's outside, weathering, so any kind of rain, frost, sun, everything the pigment has to be resistant. And most of them, like I said, the vast majority are resistant. Here I forgot to remove the granulate line. When I was making this presentation a couple of weeks ago, we were not offering granulate currently, but now we are. So just imagine that the line is not there. Generally, pigments are delivered in three forms: powder, which is the base form of the material, just the pigment, nothing else; liquid, which is a suspension of these powders; and granulate, which is again the same powder but kind of meshed together into little balls, so they are a bit more easier to handle. The maximum dosage of pigment in powder should not exceed 10%, because on one hand, you don't need as much. The benefit you are getting is getting kind of smaller and smaller with each increase. So it's kind of a diminishing returns effect. At 10%, you are not getting any more color if you keep increasing it, and you are actually diluting the cement paste with inert fine material. So you will start to observe reduced properties of the concrete. Typically, though, with the powder, we are between 3 and 6%. I would say that's kind of the general dosage. With the liquid, which is a suspension, you have to adjust that. Of course, if it's a 50% suspension, then you double the dosage, etc. Dispersion of the pigment is difficult but very important. What I mean by this is the pigment particles are so small, they are the size of the cement particles or actually even smaller. And with this come the problem of their high surface energy. They don't like to be alone in this very fine powder state. They like to kind of stick together and create these clumps or like little, agglomerates, and you have to break them down. If you don't, the pigment is basically, all the pigment is focused in this little ball in the concrete, and you will not see any effect. So the application of pigment is very important. You should always, even if it's a liquid where the particles are a bit more distributed, you should always make sure to mix them in the dry mix of aggregates, sand and gravel, to really break them down, to kind of grind them a little bit, and then add cement and water, and then you will get the maximum effect. It's very important to do this step. Otherwise, in some cases, I know that this happens quite a lot, especially with pigments that come in like water-soluble bags. They are just thrown into the truck, into the finished concrete. And of course, you get some color from it, but not the maximum. So you are wasting a little bit of the material and money. So this is how the pigment looks in the powder state. You can see there is a lot of lumps and agglomerates that have to be broken. And it's very easy. You have the mixer, you put in the pigment, again, in the sand and gravel mix before cement. In this case, I'm adding a yellow liquid pigment. After it's mixed, maybe for a couple of seconds, not very long, you just mix it for half a minute. You can add cement and water. At the beginning, when you add the cement, you will see no effect, but once you add the water and everything starts to come together and the color just changes, concrete becomes colored, looks something like that. Pigment types, I already kind of started that. We have the powders, which are the best value. That's just the raw material. They are very easy to transport. They have long shelf life. There is no water, nothing can really spoil. If you keep them in dark and cold and dry, no problem. But the powder is very fine. They are extremely volatile. You open the bag and immediately there's a cloud of pigment, and once it settles on things and on you, it will stay there. It's very difficult to clean. There is a spot here in the lab that's yellow since 2 years and I just cannot get it clean. They are difficult to dose and mix. Again, for this reason, they are difficult to handle. You want to take a little bit and everything gets color, so you need to be very careful with them, and they stick together, but then they don't stick together. It's a mess. So usually they are used mostly in ready mix. When you just take the whole bag, just dump it in the mixer carefully, and you don't have to do any dosing. And the problem is they don't flow. So automatic dosing, it is possible with some pneumatic systems, but not really easy. I would say for that, liquid pigments are much better, and that's kind of the the favorite. The most sold, most pigment we sell are liquid pigments. This is just a water dispersion, so there is no dust. The dosing is easy and precise. You can just use a volumetric or just on a scale, like what it's called, by weight. We have much bigger color selection. In the powders, we have maybe 15 colors. And I'm including all the blacks, reds, yellows, and whatever. Here we have, I think, over 160 colors, because here we can combine. We can take 3 powders, mix them together, and get a completely new color tone. So, and it's very easy as well. So if you have a customer and he says, "Oh, I want to buy from you, but I want this exact color," and it's not one we have, we can just make it. It's very, very simple. The mixing time is much shorter because the pigments are kind of pre-distributed in the liquid. But it's iron oxide, it's heavy. It's not a solution, it's just a dispersion. So the particles are swimming in the liquid, and over time, gravity just works and it brings them down. It sediments. There are no pigments that no liquid pigments that don't sediment. So you always, before using, have to mix them up a little bit. And the storage conditions are a bit limited because there is water. Where there is water, there can be life, and yeah, maybe 6 to 12 months is the kind of the shelf life of liquid pigments. Finally, the granulated ones. So now it's not crossed over anymore because now we have them again. There is no water, but also no dust because they are bulked together in bigger particles. That means they are kind of flowable because they are little round balls and they actually kind of flow. So automatic dosing is possible actually. The color selection is a bit more limited. Right now, I think we have 6 granulates. So we only have the ones that are really kind of the best selling colors. So 2 blacks, 2 reds, 1 yellow, 1 white, or something like that. And they're slightly more expensive than powder. It's still, you are not shipping water as in the liquid. So, you're still getting the benefit of just buying the 100% concentrated raw material, but there is another production step that has to go in. So the price is not as good as with the powder. So just to summarize this powder, cheap, but hard to use and very messy. Liquids, the most user-friendly, easiest to use, the most color selection, but not stable. I mean, from the sedimentation point of view. Granulate, best of both, but we don't have as many colors.